I remember standing in front of the mirror in my small apartment bathroom. The nausea that had been bothering me for weeks was just confirmed by the 2 lines on the plastic pregnancy test. I felt like my whole world was spinning, not from dizziness, but from a mix of excitement and fear. As an Omega, pregnancy wasn't unusual, but for me, having a tiny life growing inside felt beyond my imagination. I thought of Caleb, the alpha I loved with all my heart. We had been secretly seeing each other for months. Our relationship was a secret hidden from his noble family, but we loved each other deeply, and I believed he felt the same way. I decided to go to his family's manor, the Von Rhines mansion, right away to tell him the good news. When I arrived at the large manor gate, the butler told me that Caleb was in a meeting with his father and that I had to wait. While waiting, I overheard a faint argument from the study. Caleb's voice sounded stressed, and his father's was full of disapproval. I didn't know what they were talking about, but a sense of unease began to build inside me. Finally, Caleb came out to meet me, his face expressionless and pale. He didn't smile, didn't hug me like he always did. He just stood there, still, as if he wasn't the person I knew. It was at that moment I started to realize that our story was about to change forever. Caleb led me to the back garden of the manor. His face was so empty it broke my heart. The cold air from the North Sea hit me, but it wasn't as chilling as the words he spoke. "Adrian, we should break up." The words were short and simple, yet they shattered my heart into pieces. I tried to ask for a reason. "Why, Caleb? Why is it suddenly like this?" My voice trembled and was filled with tears. I looked into his eyes for an answer, but all I saw was emptiness. He avoided my gaze and said in a cold voice, "I'm not ready to be a father, Adrian. I'm sorry." He said those sentences as if he had memorized them, and then he handed me a check. "This is for the expenses for what we had together." I felt like I had been slapped. His words were not what I expected from the alpha who once said he loved me above all else. I looked at the check in his hand and felt a deep pain in my soul. "You're going to buy our relationship with just this much money, Caleb?" I asked with a trembling voice and tears streaming down my cheeks. "I don't need your money." I slapped the check out of his hand and ran away from his manor. I didn't care if he followed me or not. I just wanted to get as far as I could from the place that used to feel like a paradise, but had now become a living hell for me. I returned to my apartment, soaked and shivering, just like my heart. I let myself collapse onto the old sofa and cried silently, hugging my knees. The pain of being abandoned was more than I could bear. What Caleb said wasn't just a breakup. It was him saying he didn't want me or the baby in my womb. He didn't want any responsibility at all. The phrase, "I'm not ready to be a father," sounded completely irrational to me. As an Omega, pregnancy is a natural and accepted part of life. But for a rich and powerful alpha like him, it might have been just a minor inconvenience that could be solved with money. I spent almost the entire night trying to understand what had happened, but the more I thought, the less sense it made. I kept replaying our time together. The picture frame on the bedside table, filled with our smiles, felt like a cruel reminder of the harsh truth. Were the warm hugs and promises he made all just temporary lies created for fleeting happiness? When the first light of dawn streamed into the room, I had made my decision. I stood up and walked to the large mirror. I looked at my face, still streaked with tears, but my eyes no longer held weakness. Instead, they held a spark of determination. I would not abandon my child. Even without Caleb, I would take care of this little life as best as an Omega like me could. I looked at my still flat stomach and tried to smile to encourage myself. I had to be strong for my child, so we could live happily. I would work harder and paint more. I would do everything I could to prepare for this new role in life, so my child could grow up in this world as safely and happily as possible. A week later, my life started to return to normal. I tried to spend all my time working and taking care of myself, so I wouldn't have enough free time to think about what had just happened. I was sitting at a seaside cafe in Norden, sipping warm coffee and sketching the calm sea in front of me. I really felt like I was getting better. But then, a notification sound from my phone rang. I mindlessly scrolled through my social media feed, and my eyes caught a headline in bold black letters. It was a picture of Caleb standing next to another Omega. The other Omega looked so elegant and classy, and the smiles on their faces looked perfect, like something out of a fairy tale. The headline read, "Heir to the Von Rhine family prepares to wed General's daughter Omega." I read the next line with a numb feeling throughout my body. Caleb Von Rhine and Sebastian Noble will be getting married in 3 months. 3 months, which was around the same time as my due date. My mind went blank for a moment. The events of that day replayed again. His words, "I'm not ready to be a father," weren't true at all. The reality was that he was going to be someone else's husband. The pain I thought was getting better surged up again, more violently than before. It was then that I knew his leaving me wasn't because he wasn't ready to be a father to our child, but because he had to be a husband to another Omega who was more suitable for him. All of this was a plan he had concocted with his family to justify his heartless actions. The news of Caleb's engagement hit me like a bomb in the heart. I felt betrayed over and over again. The pain I thought had faded erupted once more violently than before. I couldn't understand why he could do this to me and our baby. He broke up with me for the ridiculous reason that he wasn't ready to be a father, only to get married to someone else a few months later. I spent almost the entire night thinking about this over and over, until I finally decided I couldn't accept it. I had to confront Caleb again and ask him directly why he did this. I had to demand that he take responsibility as the father of my unborn child. The next morning, I got dressed and headed to the Von Rhine family's manor once more, filled with determination and anger. When I arrived at the large manor gate, the same butler came out to greet me with a forced smile. He looked at me with eyes full of contempt and told me in a cold voice, "The master is not in, and even if he were, he would not be available to see anyone." I tried to argue and tell him I had something important to discuss with Caleb, but the butler insisted on not letting me in. He said, "Your business with the master is over, and if you continue to cause trouble like this, I will have to call the police." I stood in front of the cold iron gate, as cold as the heart of the person inside, and finally gave up. I knew that coming here was pointless. He didn't want me in his life anymore, not even to listen to what I had to say. I walked away from his manor feeling both hurt and humiliated. I knew that showing up there was ridiculous, but I had no other options. I walked down the sidewalk in a daze until I saw a familiar luxury car parked not far from the manor entrance. Caleb and his father were standing next to the car, talking in a tense manner. I decided to sneak closer to overhear their conversation as clearly as possible. His father's voice, which I had only heard once inside the house that day, was now loud and clear. "You have to make sure that Omega's matter doesn't get out to anyone. This marriage is the future of the Von Rhine family. Do you understand?" Caleb looked uncomfortable and displeased. He shook his head and said, "But father, I love Adrian." His father sneered and said, "Love doesn't put food on the table, Caleb. Marrying Sebastian is the best thing for you and for our business. Sebastian is a pure-blooded Omega and has everything our family needs." His father's words were like a dagger to my heart. Now I knew the real reason he broke up with me. This marriage wasn't happening because of love. It was for the benefit of their family. He left me so he could marry an Omega who was more suitable for him in a business sense. I couldn't stand to listen any longer. I turned around and walked away from that spot as quickly as I could. My heart was filled with pain and a rage I had never felt before. I would not give up. I would not let them do this to me and my child. The pain I felt turned into anger. I would not let Caleb and his family get away with what they had done to me. I went back to my apartment to get ready and decided to find Caleb again. This time, it wasn't to beg him to come back, but to demand justice. I searched online and found out that a party was being held at the Von Rhine Manor that very night to celebrate Caleb's engagement to Sebastian. I put on the best outfit I had, a dark suit I used to wear for art exhibitions. It wasn't as luxurious as the other guests' attire, but I tried to make myself look as presentable as possible. I made my way to his manor again, and I finally managed to sneak into the party without anyone noticing. I walked into the party filled with people in elegant gowns, and I finally saw Caleb. He was talking to a group of people, looking elegant and charming, as if nothing had ever happened. I walked up to him, my chest filled with rising anger and my eyes welling up with tears. "Caleb," I called his name with a trembling voice. He looked at me, and his face changed from shock to fear. He walked away from the group and led me to a corner of the room. "You're going to marry that person in a few months. So why did you say you weren't ready to be a father?" I asked him in a harsh voice. "Didn't you have a better reason than that, Caleb?" I stared at him, my eyes full of expectation for him to answer, but he remained silent. His eyes were filled with an unhidden guilt and hesitation. "Adrian, I'm sorry. I don't know what to say." Our conversation was not very quiet, and it had already caught the attention of the party guests. I could see some people starting to look at us with curious and suspicious eyes. Just then, a woman's voice rang out from behind. "Caleb, is everything all right?" I turned to see the Omega from the news. She had an elegant smile on her face, but her eyes held a hidden cold glint. She walked up to us and looked at me with a scornful gaze. "I've never seen you here before. Who are you?" she asked in a gentle but cunning voice. I was about to answer her question, but Sebastian interrupted me. "You must be at the wrong party. This is a private event for invited guests only," she said while looking me up and down with a condescending expression. "I think you should leave now, before I have to have the guards escort you out." Caleb tried to say something, but Sebastian cut him off again and told him to go greet the other guests. I stood there watching them, feeling like I was being forced to surrender in every way. Sebastian and Caleb turned their backs on me and walked away as if I had never existed in their eyes. But this time, I wouldn't let it end so easily. I would leave this place with the determination to reclaim my justice and dignity. I returned to my apartment feeling more hurt and humiliated than before. I had never felt so worthless. Sebastian's contemptuous words in front of all those people made me feel like trash. But that feeling was soon replaced by a burning rage. I was determined not to give up and to get the justice I deserved. The next morning, I started looking for a well-known lawyer in Norden and found one with a reputation for handling family lawsuits. I immediately decided to book a consultation with him. When I arrived at his office, I told him the whole story from beginning to end. I told him about my relationship with Caleb, my pregnancy, and how he broke up with me for a ridiculous reason before going off to marry someone else. The lawyer listened intently, but when I finished, he shook his head and said, "I understand how you feel, but legally, there is no evidence to prove you are the victim. You have no official proof of your relationship, no witnesses to the breakup, and no contract between you and him." He looked at me and continued, "As a lawyer, I cannot take your case. It would be a waste of time." His words were a confirmation of the fact that I had no way to win this case, no matter how hard I tried. The lawyer's words that day didn't discourage me. Instead, they made me even more determined. If no one would help me, I would fight on my own. I would gather all the evidence I had to prove the truth. I would make the world see what kind of person Caleb was and how cruel he had been to me. I went back to my apartment and started to re-examine everything that had happened. From the first day we met to the last day we talked. I tried to remember every place we had been, every word we had spoken, and every photo we had taken together. I had to find a way to use all the evidence I had to hold Caleb and his family accountable. I started searching for photos and videos we had taken together on my phone. I found many photos and videos that captured our memories. I saved all the data to a flash drive to keep as evidence. Then, I started thinking about any witnesses who had seen me with Caleb. I thought of my old friend who used to work at the art gallery with me. He was one of the people who had seen me with Caleb many times, and I hoped he would still remember. I started to feel hope again, the hope that I could successfully get justice. I would not give up and would fight to the very end, for my child and for the dignity of an Omega like me, who had been crushed by an Alpha like him. I returned to the same lawyer's office, but this time, my feelings were completely different. I wasn't there to beg for help. I was there to present all the evidence I had gathered and ask him to reconsider. When I arrived, I handed him the flash drive filled with our photos and videos and told him that I had a witness ready to confirm our relationship. The lawyer looked at me with surprise. He hadn't expected an Omega like me to be so determined. He plugged the flash drive into his computer and looked through all the evidence I had brought. While he was looking at our photos, I told him about Alex and how he was ready to testify for me in court. When the lawyer finished reviewing the evidence and listening to my story, He looked up at me with a completely changed expression. "I have to apologize, Mr. Adrian. I didn't think you would be this determined. The evidence you've brought can confirm your relationship with him, and it's substantial enough to take to court." He finally agreed to take my case. I felt like I had won a small victory in this battle. I knew this fight would be difficult, but I was ready to fight for my child and for justice. I wouldn't give up, and I would make Caleb and his family pay for what they had done to me. When my case began to show promise, I decided to give an interview to a local news outlet. The story of a poor Omega abandoned by a wealthy Alpha while pregnant quickly became a city headline. Journalists from various agencies contacted me non-stop for interviews. I finally agreed to be interviewed by a news agency I believed would present my story truthfully. I sat in front of the camera, feeling both excited and nervous. I never thought my story would become such big news, but I believe what I'm doing is the right thing. I told the journalist in a trembling voice. "I'm not doing this for money or fame. I'm doing it for my child, so they can know they are worthy of love and acceptance." I told the entire story from beginning to end. Our secret relationship, my pregnancy, his breakup with me, and his upcoming marriage to someone else. I didn't speak too badly of him, but I didn't defend him either. I simply told the complete, true story of what happened. After the interview, I felt like I had released something that had been pent up inside me for a very long time. I knew my actions would definitely affect Caleb and his family, but I didn't regret doing it. I believed it was the only way for my child and me to get justice. Overnight, the news of my interview spread throughout the city of Norden and quickly escalated to national media. My story became a major topic of public interest. I became known as the abandoned Omega, and Caleb was labeled the heartless Alpha. I received many messages of support from strangers on social media. Some told me I was an inspiration to them for facing injustice in their own lives, while others criticized my actions as an attempt to ruin the reputation of a noble Alpha family. I paid no mind to the criticism because what I did was the right thing, and I did it for my child. But on the other hand, I was a little worried about how this would affect Caleb. That same day, rumors circulated that the von Rhine family stock had fallen sharply and that his marriage to Sebastian might be indefinitely postponed. Caleb's father had to give a press conference to deny all the rumors, but it seemed my story carried more weight than his words. I knew my fight wasn't over yet, but I felt like I had won a small victory. I didn't want anyone to get hurt, but I couldn't let those who were in the wrong get away with it so easily. The news from my interview had a bigger impact than I ever expected. It wasn't just a small storm but a massive hurricane that hit the von Rhine family directly. Their stocks plummeted continuously, and the wedding became a gossip topic in every social circle. Caleb's father was furious and immediately ordered Caleb to meet him at home. I could just imagine the scene in their study. His father must have yelled at Caleb fiercely, "You deal with this now. Our family's reputation is being ruined by one single Omega." "But father, I didn't do anything wrong," Caleb would have replied with a trembling voice. "I just loved him." "Love? Love has no place in business. Caleb, you must do whatever it takes to stop this as soon as possible," his father would have emphasized with a cold and firm tone. "If you can't handle this yourself, I will handle it for you." I thought about the look on Caleb's face as he faced the pressure from his family. It must have been both a suffocating and painful feeling. I felt that in this matter, he wasn't just the wrongdoer. He was also a victim of a family that craved perfection and power. Even so, I couldn't forgive him. His decision caused me so much pain and made me bear all the burdens alone. While my life was moving along a new path filled with determination and the pressure of being in the news, I received an unexpected call from an unknown number. When I answered, the voice on the other end was one I remembered well from that day, Sebastian Noble's. "Is this Adrian?" Her voice was surprisingly soft, but I could feel the coldness hidden within. She suggested we meet to talk privately. I hesitated at first, but finally decided to go. I chose a small cafe far from the city's hustle. When Sebastian arrived, she wasn't in the luxurious dress from the party. She wore simple, casual clothes that still exuded a quiet elegance. She ordered coffee and sat gracefully across from me. "I think we should settle this," she began in a gentle but commanding tone. Your actions have already caused enough damage to our family. I stared at her with a stern gaze. I haven't done anything wrong. All I've done is tell the truth. She smiled coldly and said, your version of the truth. But in this world, there is no absolute truth. There are only stories created for each party's benefit. She slid a check toward me. This is what you want, isn't it? Money. I looked at the check in her hand and felt a pang of pain. I'm not doing this for money, Sebastian, I said with a trembling voice. I'm doing it for my child and for justice. She shrugged and said, but in this world, only money can bring justice. You should be smart enough to take it. I looked at her with anger and pushed the check back. I don't want your money, and I don't want anything from you. All I want is for Caleb to admit what he did and take responsibility as the father of my child. She stood up and looked at me with a blank expression. You really don't understand what you're playing with. You're going to ruin his future and your own. She said this as she walked away quietly, leaving me sitting there with a mix of feelings. Anger, pain, and the determination not to give up. Many weeks later, the day I had been waiting for finally arrived. The day the trial began. I went to the courthouse in the same dark suit I wore to Caleb's party. It was a suit that made me feel confident and ready to face any truth. When I entered the courtroom, I saw Caleb sitting with his lawyer on the other side of the room. He looked at me with eyes filled with guilt and a mix of emotions. I didn't know what he was feeling, but I didn't care anymore. For me, the most important thing now was to get justice for the baby in my womb. The trial began. My lawyer started presenting all the evidence we had. Photos, videos, and messages we had sent to each other. My lawyer spoke about our once-deep relationship and how Caleb broke up with me as soon as I got pregnant. While my lawyer was speaking, I looked at Caleb and saw him constantly avoiding my gaze. He looked visibly uncomfortable and uneasy. I felt a small victory taking shape in my heart. Mr. Caleb von Rhine, you have confirmed that you were in a deep relationship with Mr. Adrian Morgan, my lawyer said. And you have also confirmed that you were the father of Mr. Adrian's unborn child, but you refused to take responsibility. Caleb's lawyer stood up and immediately began to argue, but I no longer paid attention to his words. I knew the truth was with me, and in the end, the truth would always win over lies. My lawyer wasn't finished. After presenting the evidence and Caleb's testimony, he called a crucial witness to the stand. Alex, my old friend, stepped up to the witness stand with a calm and confident demeanor. He looked at me and offered an encouraging smile before turning to the judge. Mr. Alex Nova, my lawyer began, can you confirm that Mr. Adrian and Mr. Caleb were in a serious relationship while you worked at the gallery? Alex nodded firmly. Yes, I can confirm that, he said, looking directly at the judge. I saw Mr. Caleb visit Mr. Adrian very often. He regularly bought gifts for Mr. Adrian, and they looked very much in love. I'd never seen Caleb act that way with anyone before. Alex's words stunned everyone in the courtroom, especially Caleb's father, who sat frozen beside him. After Alex finished his testimony, my lawyer turned to the judge. Your Honor, in addition to the witness testimony, we also have irrefutable scientific evidence. He picked up an envelope. This is the DNA test result of the child in Mr. Adrian's womb, which confirms that the child's DNA is a 99.99% match with Mr. Caleb von Rhine's DNA. This means that Mr. Caleb is the child's biological father. Those words were like a thunderclap in the room. Caleb's face visibly paled, while his father's shock was no longer hidden. My lawyer smiled in satisfaction and turned to the judge. Your Honor, based on the witness testimony and the scientific evidence we have, we request that the court rule Mr. Caleb von Rhine as the father of the child in Mr. Adrian Morgan's womb and order him to pay child support until the child reaches adulthood. I felt like crying from joy and relief. My fight was nearing its conclusion, and finally justice would prevail. When my lawyer sat down, Caleb's lawyer immediately stood up. He looked tense and full of displeasure. He began to argue against Alex's testimony, attempting to accuse Alex of being biased because he was my friend. Your Honor, this witness has been Mr. Adrian's friend for a long time. His testimony may have been fabricated to help Mr. Adrian win this case. My lawyer smiled calmly and stood up. Being friends doesn't mean the testimony isn't true, Your Honor. And the witness has nothing to gain from this case. The fact that he is friends with Mr. Adrian simply gives his testimony more weight, because he knows both Mr. Adrian and Mr. Caleb very well. The argument was fierce, but it seemed that Caleb's lawyer's words couldn't refute all the evidence we had. Caleb sat there like a statue. His face was pale, and his eyes were filled with despair. He must have known that he couldn't escape the truth any longer. Finally, the judge ordered a recess for everyone to take a break. I looked at Caleb and felt a small sense of sympathy form in my heart. But that feeling quickly faded when I thought about what he had done to me and my child. My sympathy couldn't compare to the pain I had endured. The waiting period in the courtroom felt like an eternity. I sat in my chair, a mix of excitement and anxiety swirling within me. Finally, the judge walked back into the room, and everyone rose to their feet. The verdict was about to be read. Based on all the available evidence, including witness testimony and scientific proof, the court hereby rules that Mr. Caleb Von Rhine is the legal father of the child in Mr. Adrian Morgan's womb. The judge declared in a loud, resonating voice. And as per the petitioner's request, the court orders Mr. Caleb Von Rhine to pay child support in the amount of— I didn't hear the exact figure, the judge said. My cheeks were already wet with tears of joy and relief. They were tears of victory, hard-won after a long and difficult fight. I looked at Caleb and saw him sitting motionless in his chair, overwhelmed by emotion. His face was a mask of guilt and regret. His father's expression, on the other hand, was noticeably pale, and he looked as though he might collapse at any moment. When the hearing concluded, I walked out of the courtroom feeling as if I were in a dream. I couldn't believe that I had finally received justice. I had won. I won for my child and for myself, an Omega who had been so carelessly trampled by an Alpha. After the victory in court, my life changed completely. The child support from Caleb didn't make me rich, but it was enough for my child and me to have a better life. I moved out of the old apartment and rented a small house in a quieter neighborhood. It had a small garden where I could plant flowers and trees, and a room dedicated to my art. My belly grew bigger every day, and I could feel the baby kicking clearly with every little movement. I felt our bond growing stronger with each passing day. I spent all my time preparing to be the best parent I could be, and I was very happy with this new life. I continued to create art, but now I wasn't doing it just for money. I was doing it with true love and happiness, and I knew my child would definitely be proud of me. I hadn't contacted Caleb since that day in court, but I still followed his news. There were rumors that his father was forcing him to work abroad and that his wedding to Sebastian had been cancelled. I didn't feel any schadenfreude, but I didn't regret what had happened either. I just felt like everything had ended well. I stood at the window looking out at my small garden. The warm sunlight streamed into the room. I smiled to myself and gently rubbed my belly. We're going to be happy together, my child, I said to the baby in my womb with love. A month after I moved into my new home, I received a letter from Caleb. When I opened it, I found it was a handwritten letter from him. It was a short letter, filled with guilt and regret. He hadn't sent it through the mail, but had the old butler leave it at my doorstep. He wrote that he was sorry for everything he had done. He explained that his father had forced him to do it, and he couldn't withstand the pressure from his family. He admitted that he was a coward and was weak for not daring to fight for love and what was right. He apologized for abandoning me and our child when we needed him the most. He said he couldn't sleep at night because the image of me at the party still haunted him, and he felt guilty for making an Omega like me bear such a heavy burden all alone. I am truly sorry, Adrian. I know an apology is worthless now, but I want you to know that I've always loved you, he wrote, ending the letter with a sentence that made me feel both hurt and confused. I read his letter over and over again. I felt the pain he must have faced at that time, but that feeling quickly faded when I remembered the pain I had also had to endure. His saying that he loved me didn't make me feel any better, because if he had truly loved me, he wouldn't have left me like that in the first place. To forgive doesn't mean I have to go back to him or be in a relationship with him again. To forgive is to let the painful feelings of the past go, so we can live on happily. I tore his letter into small pieces and threw them into the trash. My action was the clearest answer I could give him. The news of the canceled wedding between Caleb and Sebastian became the talk of Norton's high society. It was shocking to everyone who once believed they were the perfect match. The truth, that Caleb was the father of my unborn child, had destroyed everything his family had worked so long to build. I saw their news on television. Sebastian gave an interview looking elegant but sad. She told the reporter, "We decided to call off the wedding with mutual consent. We want Caleb to have time to deal with his personal matters." Her words sounded mature and respectful, but I knew that beneath her calm exterior, there was a lot of disappointment. Caleb didn't give an interview himself, but his father came out to apologize and said his son was handling everything and would return to society soon. But I knew it wouldn't be easy because the Von Rhine family's reputation had been irreversibly damaged. I didn't feel happy about their downfall, but I didn't regret what had happened either. I felt that everything had ended well. Everyone got what they deserved. Several months passed. My son was born. A lovely and healthy little Omega, just like me. I named him Elias, which means "the Lord is my salvation," because I truly believed my son was the hope of my life. One clear day, I carried Elias as I walked along the beach in Norton. This place was where I used to come to escape during the most painful time of my life, but now it had become the place where I felt the most calm and happy. I looked at my son, who was sleeping in my arms, and smiled from the bottom of my heart. As I was walking, I saw a man sitting on a beach chair, sketching. He was a simple-looking beta, but he had a certain charm that drew my eyes. He looked up, smiled in a friendly way, and said in a warm and gentle voice, "Your painting is beautiful." I felt a little shy and smiled back. "Thank you." We talked for a while, and I learned that he was an architect who had recently moved to Norton and was very interested in my art. I didn't expect much from this conversation, but as we talked, I felt that this man was someone I could trust. In his eyes, I wasn't just an abandoned Omega. I was a talented artist and the strongest parent in the world. I knew there might still be many stories ahead of me, but I was ready to face them all. As long as I had my son by my side, I wasn't afraid of anything anymore. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next video.